Hi, I love a good story. So I thought, as part of our advent calendar, I'd read you a story. So I'm going to be reading The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas. The whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one knows quite the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all may be that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in the town. For he knew Heavy Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. "Oh, they're hanging their stockings," he snarled with a sneer. "Tomorrow's Christmas is practically here." Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming. "I must find a way to stop Christmas from coming." For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early, they'd rush for their toys. And then all the noise, noise. That's one thing he hated, noise. Then the Whos, young and old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast. They'd feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch could not stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, they'd stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. And they'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, "I've got to stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop Christmas from coming." But how? Then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. "I know what to do." The Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa hat and a coat. And he chuckled and clucked. What a great Grinchy Nick. With his coat and his hat, I will look like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, "If I can't find a reindeer, I shall make one instead." So he called his dog Max, and he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, "Giddy up," and the sleigh started down towards the homes where the Whos all lay snoozing their town. All their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the halls were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. And when he came to the first little house on the square, "This is stop number 1. The old Grinchy claws hissed, and he climbed on the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down a chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. These stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. And he slivered and he slunk with a most unpleasant smile. Around the whole room he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates and drums, checkerboards and tricycles, popcorn and plums. And he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimbley. And then he slunk to the icebox, and he took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding and the Who roast beast. He cleaned out the icebox as quick as a flash. Why, the Grinch even took the last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all that food up the chimney with glee. "And now," grinned the Grinch, "I will stuff up the tree." And the Grinch grabbed the tree, and he started to shove. And then he heard a small voice, like a coo of a dove. He turned round fast, and he saw a small Who. Little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught out by this tiny Who daughter, who got out of bed to get a cup of water. She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree, why?" But you know that old Grinch was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie. He thought up one quick. "Why, my sweet little tot?" the fake Santa Claus lied. There's a light on this tree that won't light up on one side, so I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it right up and I'll bring it back here. And his fib fooled the child, and he patted her head, and he got her a drink and sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou went to bed with a cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. The last thing he took was the log for the fire, and he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire, and the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who mouses. It was 15:15 dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze when he packed up his sled. Packed it up with their presents, their ribbons, their wrappings, their tags, their tinsel, their trimmings, their trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to Tip Top to dump it. Pooh-pooh, the Who's, he was grinchiously humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know what they'll do, their mouths will hang open. The Who's down in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo. There's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put a hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, and it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was Mary Berry. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes, and then he shook, because what he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came, somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood there puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes or bags. And then he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then Grinch thought of something he hadn't thought of before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas perhaps is a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light. He brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast